All right, this video is going to show you how to do a slow rendering of using your graphite pencils from hard to soft. You can see I have a range of graphite pencils. This one starts at 2H, but some of your will start at 4H. H means hard, B means soft, and what I mean by that, it starts from 4H to 2H to 3H to H to F to HB to B to 2B to 3B and so on, all the way up to a really soft pencil, which is like a 6B or an 8B. What I'm going to do now is rip the paper in half and in half again. I've already ripped it in half once. I'm going to rip it in half again. This is the paper you're using for your drawing. So this is, at one time, was an 18 by 24 inch. I'll talk about these in a minute. This was an 18 by 24 inch sheet of paper. And what I did was I ripped it halfway down the center. We've done that before in previous projects. And this is just one sheet of paper. What I'm going to do is rip that again. So I'm going to take my other half sheet and just put it somewhere else. And I can use it at another time. So I'm just going to crimp this. And how I do it is I crimp it at both ends. And that basically creates a mark, as you can kind of see. The crimping, and then I use a ruler. I like to turn upside down, especially these cork rulers have a kind of a sharper edge than regular rulers, but they all can kind of work. And then I'll put the pressure of my hand, I'll usually stand up here, and then I'll pull this corner from here towards my chin, or my chest. And I'm kind of walking my way down as I'm walking my hand down to apply pressure, and you get this really nice perfect rip in half, and there's no measuring involved or anything like that. So now I have a nice sheet of paper. I can apply this to, and then the other one I'll do it here. It's almost like creating sketchbook paper too. And if you're wondering what the noise is in the other room, these videos are made at home, so it's part of the process. All right, so what you're gonna do next is you're gonna find a glass that's about between 2 and 3 inches wide in terms of width. You could use a compass if you want, but this is pretty easy. You just go in your cabinet. And what I mean by 2 or 3 inches, the diameter is you want to put it here. This is about 2 inches and 3/4 of an inch, 2 3/4 of an inch. And this one's a little bigger at 3 inches. So basically, I'm just going to go with the 3-inch one. This is a little smaller. I could go with that, but I think this is fine. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna get my hard pencil, which is a 2H. This is the hardest pencil that I have in my pack. You might have a 4H, so you can use a 4H. Now, when you use your hard pencils, do not press down to get a darker value. You're just gonna incise the paper. It's a really hard graphite. Just use the normal pressure as you would on your pencil, and it is what it is. It's going to make the circle as dark as the graphite is. So don't apply too much. After you do that, I hope you can see that circle that I made, yes. Here's the circle here. After you do that, what you're gonna do is you're gonna draw an ellipse. And that ellipse is going to be halfway on, halfway off, meaning, see this point right here? The bottom of this circle, the top of the ellipse is going to be here, and the bottom of the ellipse is going to be here. And it's just going to be an ellipse. This is going to be the shadow, the cast shadow. And it's basically going to appear to be an ellipse. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom the camera down further so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm hoping I can do this. All right. I think that's a little better. Okay. So, I have my ellipse, I have my circle, and basically the light source is going to be coming from this direction, right? Which casts a shadow in the opposite direction, in this direction. So that's what this is about. And that being said, there's parts of the sphere that I want you to think about. Parts of the sphere meaning there's going to be a highlight about right here, right? And I'm trying not to do this too dark because I might erase it afterwards. There's going to be a medium type shadow next to that. There's going to be a core shadow next to that. And there's going to be reflected light, which means light comes down, bounces off the surface, and comes back up and bounces on the form. It's going to be reflected light right here. And then there's going to be a cast shadow here. And there's also an accent shadow here that gets a little bit darker towards the form. That's basically it. And if you think about that, you can apply that to any form. You can just make an amorphous shape and apply value to it and make it volumetric. So it's kind of nice how that works out that way. So what I usually do is, since you're working with pencil and you want to make this dark, so it's an additive application. So you want to think about the darker parts first. So the darker parts first, in this case, is going to be the shadow. So I'm just going to put a quick base down here. I'm just kind of going in one direction, okay, for this particular base. And then I'm going to turn my paper and then go in another direction. And notice I'm trying to even this up a little bit too, so it doesn't look like there's striations and whatnot. So I have this down. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to think about the core shadow. And the core shadow is kind of like a lima bean shape. So if I have a circle, I'm just going to draw a circle. Let me just draw it on a separate sheet of paper. Put it on the back of this one. So if I have a circle here, okay, the core shadow, the light's coming from this direction. Here's the elliptical shadow. The core shadow is going to be kind of like a lima bean shape. That's what I mean by a lima bean shape. But it's not going to be outlined like a lima bean shape. It's going to be a gradual shift of value transitioning from one tone to another tone. But basically, this is kind of the shape that you could start to make in the beginning. That being said, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to apply a little value in that area. I'm just going to try to keep it all in one direction at the moment, and then I can change. So I'm applying a range of value here, and I'm going to turn my paper because I mean, you can call this cross hatching, but I'm going to go in the opposite direction, and I'm building layers and layers of graphite. Okay. And what I did there is I just kind of overlap that one section. Whenever you overlap something, it's going to get darker. And I also hit this a little bit because this is going to be reflected light. It's going to be a little lighter. So now, and I'm trying to, again, build this up in different directions. So I'm just turning my paper, and building. And that way you don't have to turn your body. Now, if you can see what's starting to happen here, do you see this edge starting to form? I don't want that. I want a nice gradual shift of tone. So I have to just be aware of that. And now I can start to apply some value in where the reflected light will be, but the reflected light is going to be somewhat of a mid-tone. However, the reflected light is going to be lighter than that. And because I'm slowly building this up, I'm establishing this first just to create a sense of value as a measuring stick. And then I'm establishing this darker shape here, or darker tone, which is the core shadow. And then I'm going to build up my middle tones after that. And the middle tones are going to go all the way around. And you can kind of see where I'm going to leave this little section here light at the moment. And if you go outside the circle, it's fine. You can clean it up with a one of these later on. It's not a big deal. But this is the approach you're going to take when you're working the next assignment. This is just basically a rendering. And notice I've been working with this 2H pencil for quite some time now. And this is a 2H, and you can do this with the 4H. The 4H is just a little bit harder than the 2H. And even though this is probably painful to watch someone just render and fill value in, there's something that's meditative about the process. Just kind of applying tone. So I'm just going to fill this in. So I filled this in a little bit, Now I have a general kind of sense of volume, a little bit of modeling happening. And modeling basically is when you have a light source, there's a light tone, there's a darker tone, there's reflected light. That's starting to happen. It's starting to evolve. I didn't want to push this value too much. For example, if you say, oh, that's going to be dark, so I'm going to make it super dark. I'm just going to get a soft pencil. I'm going to make it super dark. No, that's not what I want you to do. That is definitely the opposite of what I want you to do. I want you to slowly build this up. So now I have a nice base on. Now I can build on that base. And that base, and I'm constantly rotating the paper so the paper doesn't, so I don't overlap the same lines as I'm building up the value. And as I'm building this up, what you don't want to do is create the same value of these two, and they're starting to become even now. But the nice thing is I still have that line that I had there originally, which is going to work out in my benefit, because that line, the value of the line, is going to be about the same value of the shadow at some point. So the whole idea about this is eventually these lines will disappear. The lines are just temporary borders of shapes or exterior parts of a form until you get the value to create an edge. So there's edges and there's lines. When you're applying value, you're creating an edge. So at some point, I'm just going to put another value here. At some point, this line will disappear and it will create an edge of this value, hitting another value, creating what appears to look like a line, but it's not a line. It's an edge. Now, if you notice, my pencil is not, this is what I call not showing up at the when I'm trying to apply it to this the darker part of the sphere at the moment, which is fine. That means I can move up to a softer pencil, and I'm going to explain that in a second. But before I go there, I'm just going to apply a little bit around to this parts where it's still on the lighter edge, the medium tones. And you can kind of see this is an even application of value. All right, now I can step up to the next softer pencil, and the next softer pencil is the next one up. In this case, I was using a 2H. The next one up from 2H is an H. So I can jump to an H, but I'm going to go back and use this pencil. Don't feel that like, oh, once I've used that pencil, I don't use it anymore. I'm going to go back to this. I'm just going to keep it there. At some point, you might have 3 or 4 pencils kind of in your hand, like that, in your left hand as your right hand is working. So now I'm going to apply more value, and you can see how this starts to show up, meaning that it's a softer pencil, and now I'm going on top of the base that I created, and I'm basically just doing the same thing as I did before. I'm just kind of applying another layer. That's why I call this a slow, gradual application of layers and layers and layers. And this takes a little while, but you're just doing a little tiny sphere once we're over the halfway point already. Now, as I'm building this, I'm very careful not to create lines or edges within this form, because this is a spherical form, so it's going to have a gradual shift from light to dark. There's never going to be an ending point, with the exception of the exterior of the form. There's never going to be an ending point of a value. It's going to slowly transition from one tone to another tone. So now it might look like I'm not putting much on, but I am continuously layering, and I'm turning this, and I'm building from the core out constantly. And once you get a nice base on here, it gets easier and easier, because those pencil striations don't show up as they did before. So now I'm applying it to the core shadow, or I'm sorry, the core, the core shadow here of the cylinder, or the ellipse, I'm sorry, sphere. And now I'm going to hit the cast shadow right here with one layer as well, but it's not making it darker much. So now I can step up to the next pencil. Notice this is slightly darker than that, which is good. So I'm going to leave that there, go to my next one, which is a F. And an F, if you're wondering, is between an H and an HB. It's just a step up, one step up. Some people like just drawing with an F pencil the entire time because it's more in the middle and has, you can get a range of tones. You can get light tones and dark tones with that one pencil. I'm just using it as a quick build up here, and then I'm going to switch to the next one, which is an HB in a few seconds. When you're doing this, patience is a virtue in this case. So don't rush through it. Don't be like, oh, I just want to get this on. Here's it's done. I don't care. It's done. No, it's just take your time. Take your time. And if you notice, I'm doing the same thing each time. I'm just starting from the core, working my way out, the core shadow within the sphere. And then after that, I hit the shadow underneath and I start around the form. And eventually that line that you see around the sphere will disappear as I continue to layer the graphite. And again, I'm not pressing down hard. I'm just using the graphite itself to build value. Okay, so there, so far, I can't add any more value there, so I'm going to jump up to the next one, which is an HB. Again, I'm going to start in the core. And the nice thing about this, you can kind of see that this is starting to even out, meaning that it's becoming not flat, but you don't see the pencil marks as much as you did when you originally were applying value, because there's a nice base down. And that's how I can tell if you've done this process or not. If you jump to your softer pencils and didn't read through the instructions or watch the videos, I can tell because the soft pencils just pick up the texture of the paper. And if I see the texture of the paper in this drawing, I can definitely recognize that you didn't do the process that I wanted you to do, which is what we're doing here. So now I'm getting just a little bit careful about this core shadow. And remember, it's like a lima bean shape, but the lima bean shape kind of like fades. It's a slow transition, a fade from light to dark. So as I'm building this, I'm trying not to create that edge. And that's one of the tricky things about building up the value. So you can kind of see it's getting a little better. And I'm not really hitting up here that much because I have already with the other pencils. I don't have to go up there. I'm just kind of, if you notice right here, there's an edge starting to form. So I want to kind of fade that out. So I have to just work and focus on that little spot for a quick second. So it fades out and that little edge is now gone. All right. And then I'm going to hit this here. Notice I'm not hitting this that much because, again, that's going to be reflected light. So it's a mid-tone. And the value underneath here is going to help that mid-tone pop. When I say pop, I mean there's contrast. There's contrast so you can kind of differentiate between one value and another. The reason I'm turning this sideways, I just noticed myself repeating the same striations going on top, and that's not good because you just overlap the same lines and that doesn't work out. All right, so now I have my HB, and I'm going to put this here. I'm going to jump to my B now. Yeah, just double checking that's the B. And you might not realize that it's building value, but it is, little by little. And this is the approach you're going to take on the main drawing of the next assignment. Now see those little striations there? I didn't mean to do that, but it is what it is. There could be some mark making here. It's not a big deal. And the more I add, the more layers I add, the more you can start to see the light sources coming here. It's casting a shadow down here. There's a highlight here. And now I can do stuff like this. build this up here. And you can see that line that was once there is slowly disappearing. And I'm going to show you with the next pencil. This is a B. The next one's a 2B, and I'll show you with the next pencil how to clarify that edge. We can erase this up, and I'm just trying to get a little more value here. Another thing I haven't pointed out, I'm using the side of my hand, and I'm using that as a something to lean on while I'm applying the value, and I'm just kind of smoothing up and down. I find that a helpful technique for me when I'm drawing. So now I switched to a 2B, and you'll notice your softer pencils will dull out faster because they're softer than your harder pencils. So at this point now I'm going to really start to think about that reflected light that's starting to form, the transition from here to here, but I might have to go back to use my hard pencil here, because if I use my soft pencil it's going to get too dark, so I don't want, maybe I'll stay away from that area with the soft pencil. And this is a really good assignment, just to understand the graphite, to know your tools, like a good craftsman or a good woodworker would know every tool and what they do. And also try to be aware not to get your finger in smearing this as you're working. When you work on a larger sheet of a drawing, you can always put a piece of paper down, and that way you can do this and you can protect your drawing and still continue with your approach and your application. So again, it is time consuming, but at the same time it's meditative. So you can see the reflected light, and this is what I want to point out. The reflected light's starting to form here. And what's going to make it form even better is what I'm doing now. Now, because I have a sharp point still, but if I didn't, I would definitely sharpen it. Sorry, I have to get up there. There we go. I would definitely sharpen it. La la la. Oh, that was not a good demonstration. And then I'm going to get in there and really clarify and articulate with this pencil that edge. And you can kind of see, and this is what I call pulling the line. So the line exists there, but what I'm doing is I'm bringing the pencil to the line, and I'm fading the value of the line that outlines the sphere into the shadow. And this doesn't only happen with the shadow. This happens throughout lots of things. Whether you're working with charcoal, whether you're working with any subject matter, this happens often. So there's going to be edges and edges and edges. And there's also something called an accent shadow, which is this accent kind of dark moment right underneath the form, and that's what's happening here. So by putting that in, I clarified that edge. I didn't have to erase. I didn't erase once here. I'm just layering and applying value. And notice that this is going from dark, gradually shifting to a middle tone. All right, so I have that kind of where I want it. And let's see if I can build this up a little bit more. Might not look like anything's happening, but it is. Do I want to step up to a 3B? I don't know. I mean, I could finish it with just this 2B here and be satisfied. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my 2H, which is my hardest pencil, and I'm just going to try to clarify the edges here on the lighter part. The nice thing about a hard pencil, when you go back into the dark part, you can't even see what happens. So this is a great little moment. Say I wanted to darken this up a little bit, the reflected light. But if I use a soft pencil, it will darken it too fast. I could use a 2H, I could use an H. Probably an H might be more appropriate. And I can go in there and I can just do a quick little darkening just to bring it one step down. And it's like, oh, okay, that's perfect. That's all I wanted to do. And I didn't make this darker or this darker because I went back to a harder pencil. So now, again, I have the 2H in my hand, and I'm trying to work with the highlight and make that a nice gradual shift too. From light to dark. The nice thing about this, going back to a harder pencil, is if there's any undulations or any moments where it looks inconsistent, there's not a nice gradual shift, you can go back to the harder pencil and just kind of clean it up or even things out without the worry that the dark value is going to ruin it more and you have to go back in and clean it up and all that stuff. So you'd be surprised on how effective the hard pencil is after the fact, after you layer everything on. Not really saying after the fact. And it's just helping me blend everything in without literally blending. I'm going to have another video to show you how to use graphite and blending techniques. More of a rapid approach to applying value. And this is a more slow, gradual approach to applying value. So you can definitely see there's a light source here. So this is the highlight. These are the midtones. This is the core shadow. This is the reflected light. This is the accent shadow. And this is the cast shadow. So there's many parts to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to step it up one more notch to a 3B. I'm going to see what happens. But I'm satisfied with the way it is right now, to be honest. But I just want to see what a 3B does. It's going to push the contrast a little bit more, but it's also going to require a little more work because I got to fade everything in. So I'm being careful with the 3B. Meaning I'm being careful to not make like an edge because I wanted a slow fade out. So I'm just trying to hit that lima bean shape with it by not applying any pressure. You can see I almost messed up there. And if you start to find yourself making an edge, rotate your paper like I'm doing now. And you can just kind of keep yourself drawing in the same direction. So again, this is a 3B, and I'm not applying a ton of value. I'm just kind of just trying to push the darkness just a little bit more. And then I'm going to try to hit it here too underneath. Just by making this value slightly darker, it's going to make that reflected light look lighter. In color theory, if you study color theory, if you put a light color next to a dark color, the light color looks lighter and the dark color looks darker. Same thing with just pure value. You put something darker, it makes the other part appear lighter. And you're clarifying that edge. See that edge I've been working on right here. Blah, 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 and I'm just kind of fading that out. I'm gonna see if I can hit this one more time. And I'm happy with this. I could go back to my harder pencils here and just kind of clean this up a little bit. If you want, you can clean up the little hairs on the sides. There's still an outline of the form. I mean, if you want to make this perfect, you could try to erase the outline and then go back in with a really hard pencil and clean that up. I'll show you how to do that real fast. So this outline's a little darker here. And I think I have my, where's my 2H right here. And I'm just going to go in and just try to clean up that line. I could do this all the way around, but I don't want to. I'm not touching around there. And that's basically it. So that's all I want you to do. Just make a nice gradual buildup of value to create a spherical form, to create volume, a nice cast shadow. And also, just for your cast shadow, you can add a little value here with your hard pencil. And it's just going to create that the shadow kind of fades out a little bit more. Not too much, just a little bit. So usually the shadow itself will be really sharp at the closer to the form, and it will fade away as it goes away from the form. All right, I think that's good for now.